A Legacy 5K canceled?
Next on Eternal Durdles.
This episode is supported by our Durdle Maniacs, who enjoy ad-free content as well as bonus content that can be found either on Patreon, Spotify, or YouTube. If you're thinking about supporting the show, we'd really appreciate it, and you can find us on any of those mediums. What it do?
Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Phil Bleckman, and with me as always, this time around, Cam from Al Central Games. Cam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and talk about running a shop.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about what it's like to run a shop and how you come around to making decisions like Al Central Games made after the lack thereof an announcement on the banning of grief in Legacy. And I figured we might as well just jump right into it. So we all know it's been the talk of the town for the Legacy scene for the last couple of weeks since the ban announcement. Might not even have been that long yet so far. But grief was not banned from Legacy, and everybody was expecting it to go. And the reason that they didn't do it didn't really tell us yet. They wanted MH3 to come around, potentially change the format, and they did not listen to their Legacy expert, who they have in-house at WotC, who said that they should ban grief. They decided not to, and the next ban announcement is not until August, and we all worried about what the repercussions of that might look like throughout the summer, of what that will look like for big events that are happening, and one of those big events was a Legacy 5K at Al Central Games. Cam, who works at Al Central Games, the Al Central Games released an announcement, and it said, and I quote, "After long, in-depth discussions between our events team, store leadership, and entrenched Legacy players, we have come to the following conclusion. Due to the current state of Legacy and the sentiment of local and regional Legacy players, our event is likely not to live up to the expectations that previous events have set for quality, competitiveness, and attendance. That's why we have decided to cancel the event." Cam, I want to give you the floor. Tell us what it was like to have this conversation, how it came up, how you came to this conclusion, and what it was like for you and the people you work with at Al Central.
Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield. Moxfield is the best Magic the Gathering deck building website on the internet. You can create, share, and find decks from Commander to Legacy and even fan-supported formats like Pre-Modern and Old School. You can see all of our decks on our Moxfield. Follow the links below to stay tuned.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you set it up really well there. Maybe just additionally from the Al Central side is that our 5K, our Legacy 5K, has been something that we've been doing for the past few years with extreme success. We have a pretty limited, actual play space. We are capped at 60 seats. So if we really wanted to, we can sell the 61st spot and have a buy, but, we're capped at 60 people. And then we were having this 5K and we priced it at a point where it made sense both for us to run at a store and for the participants who were coming from maybe upwards of 3 hours to travel to our 5K.
I'll say I'm one of those people. I live in New York, and I have traveled to El Central before for one of these large events. Great shop, great staff. And yeah, for an event of this size, me and my crew here in New York have traveled over to El Central to play before.
Exactly. And so things like that are things that we rely on to have this event be successful, to have this event be something that people want to participate in. And so just kind of then going into my own experience with, you mentioned the kind of, I think, universally disappointing ban announcement for people who participate in Legacy. I was also preparing to participate in this tournament, to be transparent. And as I'm doing that, I, not to favor another Legacy podcast, but I listen to a lot of Dark Depths. I know Billy and Mapson personally. And so it was actually kind of listening to their episode that really pushed me over the edge of wait, I really need to think about how this is going to affect our 5K. And in their episode, they kind of laid out there are actually a decent number of high impact Legacy events, especially in our general area, coming up over the next few months. And the way that the Legacy community works is that we really like to have tournaments, and we realize that sometimes those tournaments are a high they take a lot to put together.
Hmm.
The putting a 5K together, having SCG come to your town, and they finally selected to play Legacy on one of those days, right? That when you hear that as a Legacy player, you want to show up because you want the next time that they come to your city, they pick the Legacy event again, right? And when you start to hear Legacy players approach the format with a completely different lens, a lens of, I don't think it's worth it for me to put in the effort and time and preparation that it would take for me to get competitive in this format to go out and compete. So I'm just not going to participate.
Mm-hmm.
And when, you know, me as a responsible shop owner hears things like that, I have to consider things like canceling the event. And we did, you know, I'm sure we can get into maybe the other options that like we thought about, but you know, lowering the cost for the event didn't really make sense. That is, again, kind of us just losing money, and we didn't really actually think that was going to motivate people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Legacy players don't usually care how much it costs to play their event. It's that the event is going to happen and be a good experience.
Yeah, and have the stakes that a lot of competitive Legacy players like yearn for. I would really actually love to talk about what the other options that you were considering were, because I think one thing that a lot of players don't fully grasp is the decision-making and organizational processes that have to happen for people who operate stores and are running these kinds of events, and all of the details that you have to take into account in order to operate an event, and all of the other stores in the region that are also potentially putting on large events, which was something that I sort of learned from coming out of this announcement. I had friends, in myself included, that were considering traveling to Al Central for this 5K, similar to the SCG Baltimore event that's coming up at the end of the month. That's a 5K. And so a lot of people in the Northeast region travel to Baltimore because a 5K is worthwhile enough to make a weekend out of, right? And so on the same day, on July 20th, when the Al Central 5K was supposed to happen, there's a local 1K that's happening in New York. And of course, it's a lot easier for me and for my friends to just stay local and go to the 1K. But it's not at the same stakes. It's not at the same level of prep and practice that we might want for the SCG. That's only a week later. And so, but during that conversation of, do we stay local? Do we go? We were like, no, we should go. We should put in the effort because we really want to do well at higher stakes events. Can you talk a little bit about what working with, like, balancing all of those details on top of making it a worthwhile event for your store and for your local player base that you take into account as you're making these kinds of choices?
Absolutely, yeah. So, some tangibles, some real things about our event. Our event is a $100 entry event. Because we have 60 seats. You know, if we cap the event, our shop, you know, has profited off that event, but more or less we've just covered the entries, and it does give us some buffer room. If we don't cap the event, we have still covered our entries. So that's kind of the tangible design of the event, is that, like, you know, everybody gets what they would like, both ends. High stakes competitive Legacy, we don't have to eat our shirt on an event.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the tangibles of the event. And then looking at the event historically, we were at a point, we were about 2 weeks out from the event, like maybe a couple days more than that when we did decide to cancel it. And historically, the number of pre-registrants that we had were about half of our tournament entrants. So we would have about 30 entrants, 25 to 30 at this point. We had 6. So that is just kind of like when I have an anecdotal experience of, hey, the Legacy podcast that I regularly listen to isn't very interested, and that sentiment kind of matched what everyone else was saying. And then to also look at only 6 pre-registrants, it was so clear that we weren't even going to get to too close to our threshold of covering the amount of store credit, you know, prizing that we wanted to give out on the day. So when we run into that, it's kind of our job as a shop to think about other solutions, right? So we thought about potentially lowering the entry of the event. One thing that we didn't really consider is making it a smaller payout. We did not really consider, we're changing our event, it'll be $50 entry and it only pays out $2K. Maybe it's scaling, maybe we can get it to $3K. That's not something that we really considered. Kind of alluding to what we've been talking about, where legacy players really do want to play the higher stakes. And to the point of, you are going to travel,
Yeah, we're going to travel 3.5 hours, yeah.
Exactly, right. To play in an event with 4K more in prizing. So that wasn't really an option that we felt like we had to lower the prizing of the event. So then when we considered lowering the cost of the event, maybe to lower the barrier of entry, we just weren't really convinced that that was actually going to sell more spots for the event. And so that, at the end of the day, that's just kind of a lose-lose, because we just end up covering less of the prizing that we want to give out.
Sorry, go ahead.
The next thing that we kind of considered was having a homebrewed format where we tell our community that grief has been banned, and that we are hosting this legacy tournament, listening to the legacy community that this should have happened, so we're just going to do it.
Now, if you did something like that, would you have to then run the event unsanctioned?
That is correct. We would have to run the event unsanctioned, which is definitely part of not wanting to do that. We are a WPN premium store, and every person that we get in our store, pushes us towards achieving those metrics. And being a WPN premium store is just so key for, to entry RCQs, distributor relations, just like different things like that. It's quite important to us to be a WPN premium store. So it's much better to run sanctioned events when we can. So yes, it would have to be unsanctioned. And then just kind of additionally, that event is so muddy, right? Like the people who are excited to play that event, they're probably pretty excited. They're happy that we did it and they come out, right? But then there's this subset of people that were just going to come out anyway, and they just kind of wanted to play Legacy, and now their preparation is it's different because we put up technically a different format, and there's just so many feel bads in putting up a format that is not something that's Wizards is pushing as one you can play.
Has Al Central ever had or ever made the decision to cancel an event like this before?
So that I can remember, not really. We've canceled events for weather. That's kind of a bigger deal. People moving through snow.
Just being safe, yeah.
Yep. But
never on the context of a format, of people just sort of being disenchanted with the format.
I think the difference that would happen there is that when people aren't happy with a format, it's usually kind of long-term, and we just don't plan unsuccessful events, right? So when we planned this Legacy 5K, we were pretty committed to doing it when we had our last one in January. We really want to start being on the calendar just every 6 months, having one of these. This might throw off preparing that. But we just kind of picked a date. We said this is going to be the one. And that means that it works differently than when we plan our Pioneer RCQs that we strategically made $15 to enter this season, right? Because we know that people don't really love showing up to Pioneer, and whenever we have a Pioneer weekly event, it isn't very successful. People only really want to play the RCQs, and so it's just kind of the difference of when Wizards makes a decision like this that the community disagrees with so heavily, and will affect their decision making, that changes how we've made decisions in the past. And the only reason that we made that decision in the past is because this just isn't something that's historically happens with Legacy.
If given the context of the reason that they didn't ban Grief is because they wanted to see, I mean, as far as I'm aware, the only rationale that they gave was they wanted to see how MH3 was going to shake up the format, if it would, and give it some time to breathe, and then decide again if they're going to ban Grief in August. And it seems unilaterally everybody seems to expect a Grief ban by that time because of the fallout and the feedback that they've gotten since not banning Grief. If you had the ear of WotC for when they make these kinds of decisions in the future, given that there's no Legacy panel, but they have their Legacy expert that they may or may not listen to, that these decisions do affect stores like Al Central. If you had the ear of WotC, what would you recommend that they do when they're making decisions like this in the future to help the stores not run into these kinds of problems? Is there a solution that you would find that you think would be helpful to stores that WotC should consider when they're making or not making a decision regarding a format and how players are going to react to it?
So that's a really great question. I think part of what has left people so maybe upset and even confused after this announcement is, we've kind of already said it multiple times, and I think we're calling back to, in the original ban announcement, WotC kind of said there's no major Legacy tournaments. I think that is just kind of disingenuous and not really taking it seriously, right? And I think that is the context or thing that they use to make their decision that I would point to as their mistake. As, okay, cool, there aren't any more Legacy GPs, right? I guess that's the only thing that WotC would actually care about as a large Legacy tournament. Please reframe yourself, WotC, as what a large Legacy tournament is, and care about my tournament, right? Care about All Central Games tournament, care about the Legacy 5K that is only going to be 10% of SCG Con at the end of the month, right? It doesn't matter that people aren't flying 12 hours to play Legacy. We've said multiple ways that people invest tons of time, energy, and money to playing this format. So just please continue to take it seriously.
Yeah, that's an interesting take to recalibrate what what WotC would consider as a legitimate Legacy event that they would actually put weight on when they're making their decisions. Is there anything that you expect post? Do you expect a larger turnout post August if they do ban Grief and maybe something else that reinvigorates the community to want to get out and play Legacy more? Is Al Central planning on maybe rescheduling this Legacy 5K to another time when people are back and invested and hungry to play the format again?
So we really talked about that. We really wanted to get it just on the calendar as soon as possible. And when we really looked at that with Modern RCQ season coming up and how those are just kind of historically more high-end competitive events for our community, we're going to be running a 2K and then 2 other 1Ks that are also Modern RCQs. We just don't really have the calendar space, honestly, to push it back. Especially considering that we really do still want to have the one in January, February time slot that we have kind of historically had. So having one in maybe November and then trying to have another one in January, February just doesn't make a lot of scheduling sense. So it does look like we're probably waiting until that January, February, beginning of next year time slot again.
So that's also something to highlight here for everyone who listens, everybody in the community that hopefully listens to the show and all of the other shows, like you were talking about, Dark Depths podcast and all of the other guys that put out content, that the community being loud enough as to what our expectations and desires are for the format to WotC, that the implications are not only are something like this happens where you have to readjust how L Central is going to accommodate for events for the quality of experience that you expect and hope to put on, but that it's not necessarily something that can just be moved around once WotC does come around to making what everybody seems to agree is the correct choice, because you have to balance all of these other formats and all of these other schedules that make it more difficult because you already have your plans in place, and to have to adjust around that is a pretty significant factor that can actually cost not only the store money and support, but also us as a community significant events. So it's like, I just want to highlight that, like, us being louder to make sure that WotC actually hears us, to recalibrate what Cam was saying about WotC reframing getting these events to be something that they do put weight on, that they do think are legitimate, quote, legitimate legacy events, that they do put stake into when they make these choices. Going forward, that's going to be a big deal for you, for me, for everybody in the community that wants to play these additional events. I want to jump over just real quick because you mentioned that you were planning on playing in the 5K.
Yeah.
We just got, we saw the showcase results, and the top 32, we got to see the breakdown of the top 32. Actual half of the most recent Legacy Showcase online was Riscaminator. It's exactly what everybody was expecting. It's the best deck. It was half of the top 32 field, including 5 of the top 8. I want to ask, what has your experience been playing this format? What was your personal opinion and take when you saw that they didn't ban Grief? Were you expecting them to ban Grief and then some? Were you expecting something entirely different? What were you going to play at the 5K? What's your experience been with Legacy as the current format, both as somebody who's running a shop and who plays the format?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a fun question. So my experience with Legacy, it is probably the format that I've actually been engaging with for the shortest amount of time, probably only about 1 or 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm historically a Modern player. I've been playing Modern for longer, a decade now. And just kind of recently, within the past 2 years, have started to be able to pick up dual lands, and own the decks that I want to play. So since that has kind of happened, I've personally been someone who has wanted to play Delver. I am a blue-red Murktide main. That's my archetype that I like to live in.
Mm-hmm.
But since picking up the format, this Riscaminator deck has slowly been showing itself as the best deck. And I'm also someone who, when there's a definitive best deck, I like to play the best deck.
Mm-hmm.
So that's mostly been what I have been playing for the format. To be 100% honest, I don't really have a lot of fun when I play that deck. It's, maybe powerful. I feel like it's not necessarily something that is Entomb, Reanimate, Force of Will. These are all very uniquely powerful cards, and they're not things that I have previous play experiences to draw on, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's felt very skill testing. I have really just wanted to start to engage with the format the way that I would like to, which is being some sort of DRC main. And it's a little bit disappointing to me that there is this definitive best deck and that I can't be playing this, historically very strong deck in the format that most people agree makes for some really great games of Magic.
Mm-hmm. So you've been playing Rescaminator for how long would you say at this point?
A year and a half? A year?
Okay. Yeah. So if assuming August were to come around, because our most recent episode, we were talking about what we expect the bans to be in August and what Rescaminator will evolve to if it's only Grief that goes. Have you thought about, do you think you'd move back over to a Delver shell? Do you think you would stay with the Scam deck but just try and reconfigure it without Grief? Where do you think you'll go, assuming that the August announcement is a Grief and only Grief ban?
I think I'll definitely be hopping on to some sort of Delver strategy. Some with DRC. I do truly see the way that Grief is a creature unmasked. I personally see that as the really broken part of the format.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Reanimate's kind of the like reason that that is broken, and Reanimate is a uniquely efficient card, so that's actually kind of the where maybe I would start to go in the format is like pre this Rescaminator thing. I think Reanimate as like a fair card is like underplayed in the format. Like it's just like people want to just put their like their big guy in play, but like what if I just like have Reanimate in my like one or two of them in my deck for like when I play against Reanimator and I steal their card, but then also it's just like when my opponent kills my DRC, I just like put my DRC back in play. I don't know. Yeah, Reanimate's
historically, Reanimate was used as a one or two of in like Death Shadow builds, but it wasn't really explored like beyond that, like you were saying in many fair decks, quote quote. But we saw it pop up in Death Shadow, and then Death Shadow sort of fell out because Scam was just like the better, more tuned version of that. You just didn't need to play Death Shadow; you just got to play all these good creatures instead. Do you think that WotC should look at Reanimate?
I mean, this is when Legacy's so tough when we talk about these extremely powerful yet fun, already have made themselves pillars of the format cards, right? Like, how mad is the guy that's been putting Gristlebrand in play for the past however long Gristlebrand's been in existence? Like, how mad is that guy going to be when you ban Reanimate, right? Like, and not that maybe it's the wrong choice when you do that, right? But like, just it's the word just keeps coming up. Format identity, right? It's like it's just like there's a lot of people, especially when you talk like true game design, that are like, Brainstorm is not a card that you should have access to in constructed Magic. But Pauper and Legacy are fine, and people love playing them, and that has to be part of what you consider when you ban cards too, right? Is like how much people enjoy them. And if Brainstorm, Force of Will, Reanimate, Without Grief are going to be the reason that people are filling Legacy tournaments again, like it seems silly to try to mess with that, right?
Yeah. That's the ongoing debate, is what is deemed as part of the identity and what isn't, and where do those goalposts move, if they do move at all, with new printings and like the additional power that those kinds of cards gain with the additional power creep that WotC will continue to push. I want to throw out one last question to you, which is, as both somebody who works at a card shop and somebody who plays the format, is there any last thing that you would like to say now that you have the floor? Is there anything that you'd like to say to WotC, to the community at large? Anything that players should do to help stores like Al Central when you do these events? Is there anything that you wish players did that they don't? Do you wish there was something that players do that they didn't? What would you like the community at large to hear?
I think the one thing to point to in our conversation is pre-register for your events. If you knew that you were going to show up at Al Central and, you're just like, oh man, I just like didn't get my pre-register in, that might have contributed to us not having our event. So pre-register for your events. Not only does it let your local shop know, but like we are in the internet times of these events cap too. So like if 60 people wanted to go to our shop and they all pre-registered, and then you hopped on our website and you wanted to go, but there isn't a spot left, then there's not a spot left, and you don't get to play your tournament. So pre-register for tournaments is kind of the like very tangible, like, do that. The less tangible thing that I would like to say is, just exercise understanding. Just like, and this is more of just like life, right? It's just when your shop cancels something, maybe you're upset. It's okay to be upset, be good, complain to your friend, whatever. Please take a moment and like actually think about whether this was a good idea for the shop, right? Just take a moment and think about whether someone truly deserves your emotions for the decisions that they've made. and go forward with that.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that and say that we all understand that Legacy is a community-driven format at this point. It's people who love it. It's people who are really entrenched in it, and they want to see it thrive. And the fact that TOs are still willing to organize competitive, high-end Legacy events, that we as players should be mindful of considering the organizers putting themselves out there, taking the risk for us, for what we want, because you could fill that slot with anything else you want. Like you were saying, Modern fills up pretty consistently. There are plenty of other things that you could do other than Legacy, and the fact that you're putting yourself out there to provide for the Legacy community, the community should return in kind and be mindful of something that would help the TO, like pre-registering, like letting them know what times would be good for Legacy in preparation for other events, because I know I love going to big Legacy events when there's another major Legacy event coming up. I like being able to string them together to get better practice, to tune my list, rather than it being sporadic. You know, I really like a nice tight window of like, I'm going to practice here, I'm going to practice here, I'm going to practice here, major event, major event, major event. And anything that we can do as a community to help the TOs is going to help everyone at large. So Cam, I really appreciate you coming on the cast. I hope that come the Legacy 5K in January, when it sounds like the next one is, that me and my crew from New York will be able to head down there and join. It sounds like it'll be a great time. I've been to Al Central before, and it was a really, really lovely experience when I went. And I hope that everybody who's even remotely close to Al Central will be able to check it out soon.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate the kind words, and yeah, it means a lot to be received like this and listened to, and thank you so much.
All right, everybody, for anybody who wants to support the cast, we have patreon.com/Eternal Durdles. You can always subscribe to us on YouTube, do all the fun stuff that helps us like, share, and subscribe, everything that we can do to get this kind of content to you, and to to offer a platform with meaning to people like Cam to come on and share why they make the decisions that they make that affect the Legacy community at large. And yeah, thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you next time.
Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help sustain the Legacy content ecosystem. Just subscribing to this channel goes a long way to reminding YouTube that people love and support this format. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you should think about supporting us through Patreon. Both the links for subscription and Patreon are right here. And if you're listening on an audio format, you can go to patreon.com/Eternal Durdles. Thanks so much for watching.